so now we have this huge panel. So that's our front, our back, our flap and our base all sorted, and now we're going to add our side panels. So I'm going to take one of my side panels, and I find that it's easiest again if I make those little 3/8 of an inch marks in on both of the bottom edges, and the bottom edge is the one that's furthest away from those apertures. Don't sew this in upside down, it will not work. So I'm going to take my side panel and I'm going to lay it on the base centrally. Now the side panel is wider than the base because we've taken off the seam allowance either side. So you must make sure that you measure it up and you make sure that it's central. And then you're going to stitch between that 3/8 of an inch mark and the other 3/8 of an inch mark on the other side using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Back stitches to secure my stitching, and in exactly the same way as we did before, we're going to remove those basting stitches and the foam from both the side panel and the base panel. Make sure we've got as much of everything as we can. Oh, I appear to have pulled me charger out, so let's just plug you back in again, otherwise that will be causing all sorts of problems because the video will die. So I'm just going to take the foam from the base as well. And this is a big panel, so what we're then going to do is we're going to open up that side. I'm going to push the seam allowance towards the base in exactly the same way as we did before, and I'm going to actually stitch across the end here between the mark where the last stitch was on this stitching here and the last stitch was on here, so to create a rectangle. Again, I'm going to use long threads at the beginning and the end so that I can bury them, so when you finish your top stitching on both ends, it will just look like you've created a rectangle as opposed to 4 independent long lines of stitching. So pushing the seam allowance towards the base of the bag. Raise your needle, and again with you're kind of used to this now, with your self-threading needle, just pop that in through the last stitch just to make sure that those stitches all join up, and the same on the other side. I've had people say, oh, it's difficult to do burying your stitches on faux leather. It's not if you go through the stitch holes. Oh, long bag, short handle. So you can see that this panel's just becoming huge now, but that's all fine. So again, we're just tying off underneath. Excuse me. And then I'm going to take the second side panel and I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. So I've made my little 3/8 of an inch marks on the corners. I've got this nice and central. And I'm going to stitch it now. I would generally advise you to use clips or pins to hold this in place. I am not, because I am a girl that likes to fly by the seat of her pants. This is only a smallish panel to hold in place, so I don't mind too much. So from the 3/8 of an inch mark, the foot pedal moves. This machine's got a much smaller foot pedal than my normal machine, and it disappears underneath my table when I'm not looking. So I find my foot sort of travelling after it. And the same thing again. So I say we're doing the same things sort of repetitively. It feels like there's a lot of work involved, but actually there's not. It's just you're doing the same thing over and over again. And this is quite a big bag, so, or quite a big piece of fabric once you've got it all joined together. But actually this is the worst piece, because once you get past this bit, we start with construction, so it's actually kind of creating a bag as opposed to creating what looks a bit like an aeroplane at the moment. So again, pushing the seam allowance towards the base and stitching between where your stitching started previously and where it ended previously. Long threads, Christine. Oh, at least I remember before I start stitching. I find myself saying that to myself all the time, to be honest. And we're going to just bury these threads away. Oh, sorry, smacking the camera. seems to be fine. So that's our sides on.